Welcome to another episode of There's a Lesson Here, Somewhere, where we dive into TV shows and films that are published on Tubi. We'll explore the good, the bad, and find all the lessons in between. I'm your host, Manji, and in today's episode, we're going to be diving into the funny film Terry Joe, Missionary in Miami. So if you missed the previous episode, be sure to check it out. We looked at all the lessons learned in the cult classic Babs. Now, if you haven't seen Terry Joe, Missionary in Miami yet, go ahead and give this podcast a pause. Go watch the film. It's only an hour and 22 minutes. And then come back and join us so we can discuss. So, this film starts off in Louisiana, and we get kind of a tour of Terry Joe's room. We see that she's a Christian. We see that she's a Southern belle, hence beginning in Louisiana. And we quickly learn that she is overly horny and overly overweight. And we got that because of her conversation with Jesus. She talking about getting on her knees. And then when she got on the scale, it basically exploded. So I'm not, just trying to be insulting. We learned that Terry Joe only have one dress that she cares to wear, and that's her little Southern Belle dress, handcrafted by her crazy mother. And very quickly, we see what Terry Joe see in herself. The person that's playing Terry Joe is obviously a Negro. And when we see Terry Joe in the mirror, we see a white woman. So Terry Joe, in her mind, she obviously have a mental illness that she sees herself as something that she is not. Once Terry Joe's fall down the stairs, we meet her mother. Her mother is actually Caucasian, so that was interesting. I feel like it's kind of safe to assume that Terry Joe is probably adopted. We also learn quickly where Terry Joe gets her mouth from because her mom was not nice.
Bad enough, you got a face that looks like it's been chewed up and spit out. And then add obese into that, and it's just downright criminal.
Ain't that the pot calling the kettle black?
So Terry Joe works at the Chitlin Corner, which is basically a mom and pop shop. So she is walking to work on her way home when Bo pulls up on her and trying to talk nice to her to get some information out of her. So at first Terry Joe wasn't, very interested in him until she made eye contact with him, and then quickly she became mesmerized by Bo's hair blowing in the wind. It's like this thing that he gets all the women who find him attractive, like hooked on his beauty, I guess. He ends up giving her a ride to work. And during that ride, he learned that the Chitlin Corner don't have any cameras. So that was very valuable information for Bo. While Terry Joe's working, she's being her regular, degular, judgmental self and is judging everyone's purchases. Like someone was buying Raid and she was like, oh, you can't purchase. And then once a black family came up, she closed the line because apparently she don't serve Negroes. So once she closed the line, her and her coworker, who is obviously in love with her, went to the back to do some other things. And while they left the front, Bo and the Bobs, which is his crew, comes in to rob the place. Once Terry Joe realized what's going on, she gets her coworker Mike's attention, and so they try to figure out a plan. But in the process of figuring out a plan, they made some noise, which got the robbers' attention. Instead of Terry Joe and Mike, the coworker, running out, Terry Joe ends up using Mike as a shield, basically getting him powed in the head. So he's a goner. I was not expecting murder up in this film. Since she used Mike as a shield, that gave Terry Joe enough time to head out the back of the Chitlin Corner. So she made it out alive, thank the Lord. While she was outside, she called the first person who she could think of, which was her mother. And when she called her mother, you remember back in the day, if you were like a millennial, when you used to have voicemails and we used to set them up, he used to play a little joke like, we'll call and be like, hey, hey, what's up? Make it seem like you answered the phone, but in reality, it's the voicemail. So that's how her mom's voicemail is set up. And the way Terry Joe responded had me cracking up.
Can't believe you, dumbass. Tell me about Terri Joe. Leave a message at the beep.
You stupid fat bitch. I hate you.
While she's sitting there frustrated, we are introduced to Amethyst via the voice in Terry Joe's head. And Amethyst is calling Terry Joe all kinds of things like a murder. Of course, Terry Joe heads right to the police station, in which we learn that Terry Joe is basically a Karen. Like she reports every single thing, reports kids selling stuff. Yeah, we probably could have, assumed that, but we kind of got concrete evidence during this police visit. So she informs the police officers of what happened down at the Chitlin Corner, in which they already had Bo in the back in the suspect lineup. So the police officer take Terry Joe to the back to identify the robber in the lineup, in which he reassured her while eating his mayonnaise and banana sandwich that it was a two-way mirror, meaning that the culprits on the opposite side shouldn't be able to see through the mirror, but that was false. The mirror was practically a fucking glass. So as soon as Terry Joe pointed out Bo in the lineup, he knew exactly who she is and who told on him. And this is Louisiana, so it's not all big. The police station isn't all big and lavish like the police stations here in like California or a larger city. So basically, Bo was able to get out because they were holding the door locked with a fucking broom. But before Bo got out, he alerted his crew, the Bobs, to inform them that Terry Joe snitched on him and they wanted her gone. So Bo gave his crew the order to go to Terry Joe's house to see if she was there. Once the Bobs got there, of course, it was only Terry Joe's mother, in which, she didn't pay them no mind at first until they damaged her TV by hitting it with a hammer. And they cussed her out some. Then they finally got the information from her, in which the mom told them that Terry Joe was at church. So they took her meats and they head out to go look for Terry Joe. But once Terry Joe made it back home, she was quickly put out by her mother. Her mom was upset that she brought trouble to her house and didn't necessarily care for Terry Joe at all. We can kind of see why Terry Joe is so negative and probably hates herself. Because the mom was not loving at all. So yeah, Terry Joe got kicked out, and the first person she called was her cousin, her fly cousin, who's a party girl, and she's also an influencer. Her name is Georgia, and she lives in Miami. So Georgia ends up buying Terry Joe a ticket to Miami because she knows that there's she literally have no one else and can't go anywhere else. And I want to note that as soon as Terry Joe was put out, the first person to technically help her was a black woman, someone who she would judge and not serve at the chitlin corner. Also, Georgia made a comment that Terry Joe may be her cousin, but her mom is not her aunt. So I feel like that was confirmation that Terry Joe is in fact adopted. As soon as Terry Joe gets off the phone with her cousin, she heads right to Miami. Once she leaves from the Chitlin Corner, I think is where she was sitting in front of, we see that Bob Ann, one of the Bobs, overheard the entire conversation. So of course she relayed that information to the rest of the Bobs, and now they too are heading to Miami.
Hey, hey, I just seen Terry Joe. Damn, she's a big bitch. Gas up the truck, boys. Get the booger sugar ready. We're going to Miami.
Now, there was a lot of big bitch, fat bitch jokes up in this film. And I thought I was a lot more progressive considering, I'm a big body myself. But I thought I was a lot more progressive. But these big body jokes had me a kikiing throughout this entire film. I think it's the delivery. In the next scene, we see that Terry quickly made it to Miami, and the humidity in Miami has done damage to her hair because although Terry Joe sees herself as a white woman, she's definitely Negro, and that hair shriveled up on her. Yeah, when she seen her cousin Georgia, it wasn't a pleasant introduction for Georgia, considering, she's all about that bougie life. Now, Georgia, this fit she has on eats. Shout out Georgia. As soon as she sees Terry Joe, she wants to get her turned up and loosened up already because she knows that she is like a snooty, just Christian Southern belle. So she offers her some alcohol, but of course, Terry Joe turns it down because then that's not, approved by the Lord. Terry Joe has definitely been having a rough day or two. So she did ask for some aspirin from Georgia's friend Emma, in which Emma gave her Blitz. I'm not sure exactly what that is, but it's definitely some sort of drug, and it was not aspirin. So Terry Joe took that, and almost immediately she was loose as a goose. While Terry Joe is like now currently turned up, she makes eye contact with Marcus, who is black. And they end up in a room and, they're getting a little freaky. But while, she's making out and just doing things with Marcus, we hear Amethyst again in her ear. Now she's calling her a whore. So after hearing Amethyst, Terry Joe tried to, not be deflowered, but then she ends up just having fun because of the blitz that she took, encouraged her to do those wild things. So she ends up on top of Marcus and they just fooling around to the point where the vase that was on top of the headboard ends up falling on Marcus and knocks him out. Of course, our Southern Belle started freaking out and she tried to wake him up. He wouldn't wake up, not even at the stench of her drawers. So she ends up leaving the room. And now we see that she is definitely like dizzy and just completely out of it. And while she's like falling and tumbling everywhere, we are introduced to the Spanish Poppy. And he has like a little cross tatted near his eye. And he basically takes care of Terry Joe for the rest of the evening to make sure nothing else happens to her. And the next scene, we see Terry Joe passed out on the floor. She's waking up surrounded by money, drugs, and trash. Georgia reminds her that she was turned up by calling her Twerk Terry and showed her a video of her twerking. And then she reminded her that she was hunching on Marcus, a Negro, in the room that night as well. So now Terry Joe is just distraught. She wants to go to the house of the Lord and to repent right away. So she Googles she Googles where's the nearest all white church and found love and friendship. So now her journey begins to find that church. She leaves Georgia's house and just starts walking to find the church. She sees this homeless dude in the wheelchair at the bus stop, so she asks him for help. And this dude in the wheelchair was interesting. He was a very interesting, disgusting character. He had one of those little flashlight things. I don't know what the fuck those things are called, but he had one of those and he named it Sheila. Yeah, he ended up finessing $5 out of Terry Joe for directions to the Love and Friendship Church, but those directions led Terry Joe to like this popular chicken shack. And of course, Terry Joe wouldn't be Terry Joe if she wouldn't be judging the place. She's judging all the Negroes in the place, even though she is a Negro. So once she entered the chicken spot, she, of course, have no respect for anyone. So she cuts the line and tried to ask the cashier for directions to the Love and Friendship. But of course, they like, you gonna buy some chicken to get out of this line. And the people she cut in line too was ready to cut her. But the cashier had calmed them down, especially the guy that she cut, the first guy. And instead of, getting directions, she ends up just ordering some chicken. And she took the last of the thighs. So that pissed the guy that she cut off even more. And later on, we learn that this person's name is Rain. While Terry Joe is tearing up some chicken at that chicken shack place, Bo and the Bobs end up going to Georgia's house to see if she was there. And Bo was able to mesmerize Georgia as well because I guess because she's just simply attracted to him. But unfortunately for them, Georgia didn't know exactly where Terry Joe went. She just know that she left. So she shared that information with them and then also reminded them of Fakebook, which is essentially Facebook. Bo and the Bobs, they checked Facebook and they found her account and they seen that she was right at that chicken spot because she's posting everything. Now we head back to the chicken spot in the next scene in which the cashier approaches Terry Joe and gives her business card so she can do her hair because, she do hair on the side.
I do hair on the side. And bitch, you most definitely need to come see me. Your weave looking a hot ass mess.
Sweetheart, this is not a weave. This is all my natural hair.
Well, bitch, if that's your natural hair, then I'm making a stallion.
I have to write that one down because I'm gonna have to use that in real life when somebody got me messed up. Shortly after Terry's conversation with the cashier, she leaves the check-in spot and continues on her venture to find Love and Friendship Church. So as soon as she leaves, Bo and the Bobs pull up to the chicken shack and they approach the cashier, Nicole, and they try to see if she had any information on Terry Joe. And this part was funny because Bo was trying to do his little mesmerizing thing that worked on Terry Joe and her cousin Georgia. However, it's safe to say that Nicole.
Is there something wrong with your face? You gotta take a shit or something?
No.
Yeah, she wasn't attracted to him. So it didn't work on her and he just looked crazy trying to like mesmerize her. So Nicole thought they were the police and she wasn't trying to snitch, but she ended up sharing the information that she did know about Terry Joe. She also gave Bob Ann her business card so she could like get her hair did. So while Terry Joe was walking and trying to find the church, she ends up walking up on like a Cuban cookout. So at first they wasn't messing with her, respectfully so. And not to mention she was also just disrespectful as soon as she pulled up, insulting everyone. Well, at first, they was gonna do what they need to do until we realized that the Spanish poppy that who was at the party last night was also here. So he let everyone know that Terry Joe was his friend. So that put everyone at ease. And then they were instantly welcoming to Terry Joe. So, and Terry Joe looked like she was having a good time with them. She was partying, she was eating some good food. Like, yeah, she was having fun with the Cubans. But of course, she's posting everything on Facebook. So she's posting pictures of the food she's eating. And one of the Bobs, they went to check to see if she posted, and they seen that photo, and they're like, "Damn, she eating again." And in the photo, she just so happened to be taking a photo in front of the cross street. So they knew exactly where to go, in which they went exactly there. While they're on their way to Terry Joe, she's still having a ball until some other people pull up and start shooting at the cookout. So of course everyone's freaking out, including Terry Joe. And she like pushed someone's abuela up off a motorcycle, hops on it, and tries to escape. Now, while this is going down, Bo and the Bobs are pulling up as well. So they kind of get shot at as well. So now they lose Terry Joe in the midst of all of this. And Terry Joe, again, she's already took this motorcycle and she don't know how to drive it. So she ends up running right directly into a drag queen who was on the corner. Like she was supposed to be in the street. Terry Joe was supposed to be in the street. She ended up on the corner and hit a drag queen. After she hits the drag queen is yelling and cussing her out because she hit her with a motorcycle, and that alerted her friends, and they all came out. Now, one of the friends was the guy from the chicken shack. So this guy, who name is Rain, they are a drag queen as well. So now Rain is like, "Oh no, you owe me." So they make Terry Joe come inside, and Rain told her that you're gonna have to work for this. Like you done already cut me in line, you messed with my food, and now you messed with my girl. No, you're gonna have to work off this debt. So they were like, you were gonna have to perform tonight. But before we even got to that conversation, of course, Terry Joe is insulting. And she said the infamous line, which made this character who started off on TikTok popular, the "you're homosexual."
You're a homosexual.
A what?
You're all, you're all homosexuals.
Sure.
And I thought it was really interesting because out of all the people who Terry Joe was very like insulting to, I feel like this community with the drag queens, they were the ones who didn't take it personally. And I feel like that could kind of be a lesson.
Message.
And that is whatever is said about you, if you know it doesn't apply to you, don't take it on. Like, don't take it personally. And that's kind of one of the four agreements, actually. Don't take anything personally. And I feel like the drag queens was a great representation of that because she was, I think, the most insulting to them. And they was just like, whatever, girl, you're a bitch. Rain made Terry get on stage to perform, in which Terry had sung a nice little cute song, and it really impressed Rain. So after that, they had a nice little heart to heart, and they realized that they actually had some things in common, both of them being kicked out. And Rain shared a terrifying story with Terry Joe on how she was treated and abused because they were gay. And Terry was like, even a homosexual shouldn't even be treated like that because what Rain shared was terrible. But Terry Joe, being the nice Christian gal that she is, she invited Rain to church because maybe they could like pray the devil out of them. But Rain was like,
This here is my church, and my religion is holding a safe space for me, my girls, gays, theys, and whatever the hell else is out there to just be. And honey, God ain't in the church. He's in the heart.
You're right about that.
so now that Rain know Terry Joe's situation, she offers her a place to stay. She stayed the night over Rain's, and the next morning, Rain was like, "You're my girl now, and I can't have you looking crazy out here in these streets." So they take Terry Joe to a hair salon where they worked, and also where Nicole, the cashier from the chicken place, worked as well. Also, another note so far, while Terry Joe has been on her ass and kicked out by her mother, all the people to help her thus far on this journey are the very people that she was judgmental to and essentially claimed to hate. So while they're in the salon, Nicole, the cashier from the chicken shack, is actually the one who ends up doing her hair. Again, Terry Joe is judging her, asking her if she had horse hair, and claiming that she had wavy hair. But anyone with eyes can see that that was not the case. In the next scene, we see that Bo and the Bobs are still on the hunt for Terry Joe, and they have no clue where she is. But then they remembered that business card that they received from Nicole earlier, and they kind of figured that she might be there. Terry Joe's hair is now dead. And while she's looking in the mirror, again, we see what Terry Joe see, which is a thin white woman. And since Terry Joe is feeling so fine and good, she went ahead and took some photos and posted it to Facebook. So now the Bobs and Bo know exactly where she is. Now, everyone was having a good time in the salon. Like, Terry Joe just ruined it all by being crazy insulting while eating some Vietnamese food with them. She said she basically insulted every single type of person in this film. But in this salon, I told you the drag queens were the only one that was very like that tolerated it. The women in here did not. So I say all that to say they kicked Terry Joe up out of that salon. So of course, Terry Joe got to walking because what else she gonna do? And she ended up walking right into the dude that was in the wheelchair from the other day. The dude in the wheelchair ended up finessing Terry Joe one more again and got some money out of her in exchange for directions to Love and Friendship Church. So that sends Terry Joe up on her way. So as soon as she leaves, Bo and the Bobs pull up, of course, and they see that she's no longer in the salon. They too see the guy in the wheelchair, in which they tried to get some information out of them. And he wouldn't give up any information to them until they took Sheila. So to protect Sheila and to get that thing back, he told them exactly where Terry Joe was headed. So while Bo and the Bobs are on their way to love and friendship, they just so happen to run into Terry Joe. They literally see her walking, and Terry Joe, she has to go number two because of all that Vietnamese food. So she went into this little establishment, found the bathroom, and did what she needed to do. And while she's taking a boo boo, we hear Amethyst in her ears again. But this time, it's a little bit different because Amethyst is, I guess, calling Terry Joe to her because Terry Joe eyes like rolled behind her head, and then she kind of glided out of the bathroom into the bar area, in which we see that Amethyst is actually a vampire and she was eating. Not like, looking fabulous, but literally eating, sucking on someone's neck.
Misty? Oh, what's the matter? You look like you've seen a ghost. Boom. Well, I'm away.
So Kelon is playing Terry Joe, Georgia, as well as Amethyst. So I feel like it's safe to assume that Amethyst is related to Terry Joe in some way. And considering they are from Louisiana, it makes sense with the connection in vampires to me. While Amethyst was, saying her monologue, we learned that she snuck out and then something happened with vampires in which she was turned to one that night that she snuck out and been a vampire ever since. Of course, Terry Joe being Terry Joe blamed her for all the things that happened to her, which was pretty messed up, but Terry Joe's pretty fucked up. I guess Terry Joe has had enough of Amethyst being up in her mind, so they end up fighting it out. And Terry Joe wins. She ends up putting a flag through Amethyst's heart, I believe. It was an American flag, of course. And Bob Ann, she went inside to get Terry Joe. So she's watching all this go down. And then once Terry Joe finishes with Amethyst, of course, she leaves the building and walks right into Bo and them. So Bo and the gang, they end up tying Terry Joe up, and instead of offing her right away, they tried to extort some money out of her somehow. First with the cousin, because when they pulled up on her house, they see how big and lavish it was. So they was like, she got to have some money, but it's Georgia we're talking about. She didn't take anything that Terry Joe was saying seriously. She thought she was doing some S&M type stuff. And she just like laughed and was like, why you ain't invite me, and hung up. So that was a major fail. So Bo and Bob's was like, all right, well, let's just offer then. But then Terry Joe reminds them that they have a lot of money saved from after her dad passed via insurance. So she tried calling her mom, but that same voicemail comes up in which it sounds like she's answering, but it's the voicemail. Terry Joe is shit out of luck, or so we think. Bo made the call to go ahead and pow Terry Joe. So two of the Bobs are fighting because they both want to do it. So they're fighting over the gun to see who is going to be able to shoot her. And while they're fighting, our Spanish Poppy comes in to save the day. He rides in with their gang, he shoots them up, and he releases Terry Joe. And the next scene, we see that Terry Joe is passenger in Spanish Poppy's car, and he is taking her directly to Love and Friendship, the church where she's been trying to find this entire film, and it's the place that he says she needs to be. Now, before Terry Joe exits the car, Spanish Poppy gives her a business card that say Jesus Cristo, which translates to Jesus Christ.
And just like the Lord, I am thy shepherd. Seek the lost, bind the broken, and lead the willing.
Oh, well, will I ever see you again?
I'm always on the main line.
And so that's his name, I'm assuming. And I feel like it's safe to say that he was playing Jesus in this film. He was literally saving her every step of the way. And not to mention, once she got out the car, she turned around and he basically disappeared. But Terry is just full of gratitude because she finally made it to this all white church, so she think it is. And she enters and she's just happy to be there until we learn that the pastor is not only homosexual, but his partner is black. Now, this is Terry Joe we're talking about. So instantly, she gets up and calls out the pastor for being homosexual and tells them how it's not godly to be homosexual or to deal with Negroes. Now, this is what, like, the start of everyone in this film who Terry Joe used or took advantage of calls her out. And it all started with Rain. So, Rain immediately calls her out and reminded her that she actually invited her to church. And Terry Joe rebuttal saying, yeah, but not this church. You need to go to a Negro church. So then Nicole hops up with the spotlight on her and reminds Georgia that she's just as black as them and even as black as her elbows. Then Mike from the Chitlin corner, who she used as the shield in Louisiana, pops in and gets the spotlight and reminds her how she, in fact, used him and it ended up with him being dead. And he did nothing but love her. Then the Cuban kid popped up from the cookout that she was enjoying and reminded her how she pushed the abuela to get away. He called her a torta negrita. Then Amethyst pops back into the picture with the spotlight on them and the final read to Terry Joe and reminded Terry Joe that
Like, all you've done is take advantage of the kindness that these people have shown you. You use God and religion to shame and ridicule everyone for being exactly who God made them.
who the fuck do you think you are? So after everyone said their piece, they like went to get Terry Joe and they didn't like beat her up or nothing. They just surrounded her and Terry Joe was freaking out. And then she wakes up and she's back on the floor at Georgia's place, surrounded by money, drugs, and trash. So we learned that it was all a dream. Now Terry Joe is looking even crazier because she's telling Georgia what she experienced in said dream. And then Rain and Nicole from the Chicken Shack comes over to do Georgia's hair. And of course, Terry Joe remembers them from her dream. And she's like, yo, you did my hair. And Nicole was like,
Bitch, please. Ain't no way in hell I did that.
No.
but then what made this a little bit like kooky is that the card that Jesus Cristo gave her was still in her bra. So she pulls that business card out, reading the name on it. It's a bit faded. And then she looks down at her shoes and we see that her shoes are worn out. So it means that she's been somewhere. So it's kind of like, what happened? Was this all just like an experience for Terry Joe to have like some self reflection? And the movie ends there. So let's get into the final lesson of this film. Now, this film was very easy to figure out the lesson because they handed it to us on a platter. And not for nothing, I feel like that was imperative for a film like this to end with some sort of message because it was very insulting throughout the entire film. And for any type of person, no matter what you identify as, no matter what race you are, you're going to probably feel insulted at some point or laugh at the insults as well if you have a lighter heart. You can only listen to insults so much before it kind of puts a bad taste in your mouth. So we had to come to some sort of lesson, I personally feel, at the end of this film. And I think Kelon, I believe that's how you say his name, I think he did a wonderful job with that. This was very entertaining. I don't think any of it went too far. Definitely could have, but because also he looked like me, it was a lot easier for me to digest some of the things he was saying when it came to like the racist shit. But overall, I did enjoy this film. And I love the message at the end because I feel like there are so many people who identify as Christian or whatever religion, who come off as very judgmental. They go to church every Sunday and they think because they're quoting Bible scriptures that they are holier than thou and they have the right to judge everyone who is not exactly like them. But the beauty of us being humans is that we are all not alike. We could have the same exact skin color and still not be alike in the way that we carry ourselves and just our character. I love this message and I love this reminder with the little fun puns in between of to just basically treat people how you want to be treated. I believe that is in the Bible, right? But basically, don't judge someone based off where they come from or who they are. Judge them on their character. I feel like that's what we need to do as humans because, again, we are all different. So that means we all are not going to get along, and that is okay. But as long as we're judging people or not liking people based on their character rather than something that they literally have no control over, then the better off we would be. And also just like not demonize them too for not liking them. Like it's okay to not like someone and move on. You don't have to like hate them or just talk shit or do all these negative things to validate your feelings. Just keep on with life. Like, you know what I'm saying? So yeah, that's it for this episode of There's a Lesson Here Somewhere. If you enjoyed this episode or any other episode, please be sure to like, subscribe, share this episode in particular with a friend. And our next episode, we will be diving into a thriller. Like, I love thriller movies, so that's always going to get my attention first. The next thriller movie we're going to watch is called Takeout. And of course, it's available on Tubi for free. So next Monday, we'll have the review of Takeout. Again, we're watching Takeout. Thanks again for watching and listening to your girl, and I'll see y'all next week.